It feels very student-ish.
But the last 5 minutes, I went, whoa!
1999, best movie year ever? Episode 1, following.
Welcome to the Blockbusters and Birdwalks podcast. I am the curator, Garrett Chaffin-Quiray. Today we have a conversation with a friend, Ed Rosa.
That's me. Hi. My filmmaking partner and I have a YouTube channel, Toothless Richard Productions, where you can see a number of our short films.
We've begun our study of 1999 by focusing on a movie from 1998 because we're contrary. Following is Christopher Nolan's debut feature film, and it was made around the edges of cast and crew who were otherwise full-time employed people, donating time to their buddy Chris, who wants to make a movie, partly through the help of his then-new wife, Emma Thomas, who's continued to be both his wife and his producing partner in the years ever since, to initiate the potential of a career in movies. It shot in and around London, and it shot in spaces and in places that I assume they have specific individual control over, so therefore you have no overhead. There is no rent, and the cast is extremely small. The point. This movie was shot across 1 year's worth of Saturdays. Have Sunday off to just be leisurely people who have time to rest, and then go back to work all week long and come back together again on that Saturday. It is an object example of how you can make good art with thoughtful planning and consideration for what you can and what you cannot do. The trouble I have with watching movies is that I'm often watching them on my laptop.
Did you ever hear that clip of David Lynch where he's like,
It's such a sadness that you think you've seen a film on your fucking telephone. Get real.
These are supposed to be larger-than-life images, larger-than-life stories, characters, so to take all of this larger-than-lifeness and squish it down into like a tiny screen.
This is a very 2026 way of thinking of things. It's a very middle-aged way of thinking of things for people like us born from an earlier era who remember going to the show a lot. And we've probably logged tens of thousands of hours between us in darkened theaters. The other thing to realize is that in 1998, very few people saw this movie. My notes showed that it debuted at the San Francisco International Film Festival in April of 1998. 1 year later, in April of 1999, it opened on one screen. It earned $4,000 that opening weekend.
In one theater.
In North American Hall of $48,000. And then it had a double that, or roughly double that, in foreign and international markets, which means it earned above $120,000 against a budget of, get this, $6,000.
Wow.
One of the things that sets Christopher Nolan apart from his ilk, other emerging filmmakers at the end of the 1990s, is he's been able to do nothing but watch his career climb. The budgets he's been given, the returns he's produced for his producers. And later this month, July of 26, we're going to get The Odyssey. This movie following is about a young man who's a writer living in a hovel, lonely, who begins following people. And he begins following a man who teaches him about petty crime, breaking and entering. But what our young man, what Bill doesn't understand is that he is a mark by a more experienced con named Cobb, who teaches him how to burgle because Cobb wants to pin a crime on Bill, and he is successful. That's a linear way of describing this movie. That earlier point about seeing it on my laptop, I felt distracted by noises out my front door, by my wanting to have a little snack.
Right. And
all
then,
of those things.
And then if it jumps and you weren't looking...
What am I looking at now?
Now I got to back it up. I swear to God, this movie should have been called, it's Oklahoma with an exclamation point. This movie should have been called Following with a question mark because are you following?
I became a fan of Nolan like a lot of us did because Memento just blew my socks off.
Yeah.
The thing is always chopped into pieces that force you back on heel to assemble what it is that you're experiencing. Sometimes it's more clear. It's pretty clear what the Batman trilogy is about. But even so, there are moments where like, what am I looking at? What is happening? And that becomes all the more of a sort of stamp of what this director, who's now also his writer, director, producer, and in this movie, it's cinematographer, Christopher Nolan. His business is doing chop suey to your brain.
Right.
And then shoveling right through the middle of it, a relatively straightforward story once you see the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there are reversals. 69 minutes long. For 64, 65 minutes, like you, I thought, this is a really elevated, very, very thoughtful version of a low-rent thing I've seen called a student film.
Mm-hmm.
But it can tolerate, and I can tolerate its long, long length. But then at the end, it reverses. And you suddenly have a lot of things clarified. And you lift your chin up and go, wow, this movie succeeds. Because that's the point when Bill realizes Cobb has been treating him as a mark the whole way through.
That sort of non-linear style of storytelling that seems to be so much his kind of, his métier.
You develop a genre you're going to attach to, which has benchmarks that must be achieved or you'll disappoint everybody. But you can achieve them in different ways than are expected. And among the quote, easiest, unquote, is to reverse chronology, do things without a linear order, to confound motivations, and to make people who are normally beautiful, ugly, ugly, beautiful, the heel, the hero, the hero, the heel, and so on. That challenge seems to be his whole thing. That's what he really digs.
I can only imagine how long he agonized over that script.
Sure. There's some chewy, chunky dialogue in this, and the actors are doing their work pretty well. I have to admit, I found Cobb, the bad guy. He's played by an actor named Alex Haw, and I believe this is his only credit.
Right.
As I was watching the movie, I thought, my God, this is just Rupert Everett all over again.
Yeah.
He's very handsome. I find him attractive. He's charismatic and knowing. He's put together. He's a step ahead of Bill. Bill takes lessons from him.
Yeah, he's likable, but yet
there's
a
oil
bit
on
sinister.
him. Yeah, he's not trustworthy. Our lead is Jeremy Theobald, and he is a co-producer of the movie. I think he's edited things with and for Christopher Nolan and done some other private works a few times as an actor. He's an appealing guy as the basic lead. In fact, at a certain point when Cobb is making his acquaintance, Cobb takes apart our guy Bill.
No, we're not going to take it. I feel like scrounging off some poor doll-head fucker. No offense. None taken.
And that appealed to me because in my middle 20s, I was a Bill. The difference between me and Bill, aside from his penchant for criminal activity, which I did not undertake, was I had a missus who was willing to keep up a job and keep us in our rent. But I was hanging out at home, trying to write each day, waking up to the cursor on my computer saying, do something, fool, because you could at least be pulling coffee down at the coffee shop. But instead, you're here. You're letting your hair grow long. You're wearing flannels. You're just kind of milking the fact that there's this teat called life, which you have the ability to suck from, but you can't really do anything with yourself right now. You're kind of stuck. And so Bill gets attached to this whole criminal enterprise. There's a woman, the blonde, played by Lucy Russell, and she is another person who Cobb is manipulating to make Bill do things and ultimately for Bill to be the fall guy for several crimes and murders. There is this one line that Cobb drops on Bill. They found somebody's spare key and they've entered an apartment to steal things. Not big things. They want easily cash sellable stuff. Jewelry, CDs, things they can put in a single bag and walk away quickly. And Bill struggles, well, why are we doing this? And Cobb has this explanation.
Interrupting someone's life, making them see all the things that they took for granted. Like when they go back and buy all this stuff from the shelves of the insurance money, they'll have to think for the first time in a long time why they wanted all this stuff, what it's for. Take it away. Show them what they had.
It's funny because at this point in the film, I'm not thinking it's going to go where it's going to go. And now I'm thinking this is more of like a man bites dog thing where, you know what I mean? Where we're going to get like into sort of some philosophical examination of like criminality or the underworld or something where, this guy from, presumably the right side of the tracks winds up on the wrong side of the tracks with this guy in, typical noir fashion.
And that noir connection. I'm uncomfortable with noir as anything more than a stylistic strategy. I don't give it the weight of being a narrative form.
Right.
I know that a lot of people get hung up on that and they want to go to blows and have arguments and whole books and dissertations and friendships have been won and lost.
Oh yeah, as a devout attendee of the Church of Noir Alley, I would totally fight about it.
Welcome to a new year in Noir Alley. I'm Eddie Muller, your dedicated docent of the dark.
There's a femme fatale figure. There's this dalliance with criminal enterprise. There is goodness that is crushed beneath the weight of guilt and fraud and true evil. There's a lot of black and white. It comes from paucity. It was developed as a style during the war years in the 1940s because color film stock was expensive. You know what? If you're a struggling wannabe filmmaker in a pre-digital age called Christopher Nolan and you want to make a movie on film, color film stock is expensive.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's more costly to develop as well.
This movie's choice to do things in black and white lends itself to the feel, the touch, the tropes, the stylistic panache of the noir thing. But it also allows the black and white spectrum to cover up flaws in color matching.
Right.
And also to just blast things with light with less control than a professional film set might employ.
Right, which is really smart.
A lot of the big chewy scenes of people monologuing or conversing with one another, it's in mid and close up, which means the mic is just right there. It's a foot away from the mouth to get quality audio.
Yes.
When they're lit indoors, it's coming from one direction, so it's very high contrast, throwing a hell of a shadow. But because they're very closely framed, that camera's not far away from the face. That's fine. I don't really care about the shadow. It's on the left. It's out of the frame.
Right. Like, okay, we got 2 takes tops, guys, because the meter's running. You know what I mean? But if we really nail it before we're rolling,
we all go and have some bangers and mash early.
Right.
We get a pint and we call it a day, and I'll see you next Saturday.
Right.
So there's much to recommend in this movie along all of these lines of economy, of reaching the goal of surprising an audience. And I'm a guy raising my hand here in this studio. I was surprised by this movie. Smash cut. And Garrett finally gets to fulfill being a fan, a super fan.
Right.
Who's more thoughtful and grandfatherly now because of my age and white hair. I can reflect back on all of this and sort of acknowledge this is a special thing that Christopher Nolan was able to achieve with the help of all of his cast and crew. And there are various people listed in the thank yous and so on in the end credits. His uncle is one of the supporting characters. He's a police sergeant investigating the crime that Bill eventually is hung out to dry for. His brother's in the background as one of the crew members. So this is not altogether a family affair, but it sort of is.
Yeah.
And I like the notion of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that stage in your career when...
That's all you got.
Right. And you got to use it.
The comparable movie that bubbled up to my mind was El Mariachi.
Okay. I thought Pie.
Yeah, okay, right. And these are all debut features by important filmmakers who are still with us, doing sometimes important work, sometimes not. But they got their start like just basically emptying their couch cushions,
right,
and turning that in for enough film stock to make a movie on an astonishingly small scale. Now, I say that because El Mariachi, I know less about Pie's background, except that it was a small movie by Aronofsky. And then, of course, we're talking about Following. That was done for $6,000. I know that in my middle 20s, if you'd said, if you give me $6,000, I will give you a year of my devoted service and we will make a movie. It could have been $6 million for all the money I had.
Right. Yeah, might as well have been.
It's still beyond my scale. But there was a way, if you wanted to hustle, that you probably could have leveraged yourself. I never had the nerve. I never had the creative wherewithal. I never had the project in mind. I didn't have the follow through.
Yeah.
And as I've aged, I've come to realize, while I have written books, so I know what it is to spend longitudinal hours and hours and hours working on a project. I know what that is. But I have not done that in collaboration with various people. And you got to keep all of them happy for weeks, months, even maybe a couple of years, while also trying to figure out on your near poverty dial lifestyle, how can I get $10 out of this recycling return?
Right.
Because if I can get another 10 and another 10, I might have just enough to make the sacred object that launches my career. And boom, Following.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan. But when this movie shows up on that one screen, presumably in a large city like New York, other things that were around it. Cruel Intentions was in theaters. Ron Howard's Ed TV, The Truman Show knockoff. The biggest thing happening, though, in the springtime when this was released was The Matrix. 10 Things I Hate About You was in theaters. Never Been Kissed. These were mentioned in the Raftery book. So was Go. David Cronenberg's Existence. And then kicking off the summer season while Following was on its way out of theaters was The Mummy. I was going to try to include that in this series because I was curious about revisiting it, but I'm convinced that if I go back and see
don't do it.
Because I have a warm memory of going to see it. The circumstances were really nice. I don't want to blow it.
Phantom Menace really ruled that entire year of 1999, basically.
It really did. It was the commercial killer of all killers. It was the biggest thing out there. And right around the edge is this debut feature by Christopher Nolan following, which earned less in its global box office run than George Lucas probably spent on one day of rendering Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, right.
And I think historically, considering the value of these movies and their virtues as aesthetic objects, you can celebrate to the nth degree the technology of the Phantom Menace. But there's something just thoughtful about some dude blowing $6,000 and all of the goodwill of all of his friends and family making something unusual that works in that final 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It really comes together.
I just wanna go back to 1999. Take a ride to my own neighborhood. I'm gonna party like it's
1999, best movie year ever?
I guess the jury's still out.
Boop boopity doo.